Origin just owns UX, and this is China's new giant infantry vehicle is a nightmare. This is an infantry vehicle. Okay, this is like Bradley and that, right? Like the Russian one. Look at how big it is. It has a proper cannon to it, right? Like what is that? I mean, is it a cannon? Or is it just like a machine gun type of thing, like 30 millimeter or something, 50 millimeter, whatever. Okay, seriously, like it's like gap between tank and infantry vehicles is getting smaller. Obviously, like tank must have a like big ass barrel that takes most of the tank's space basically with the loader and everything. Now there has to be crew that maintains the tank. This is mostly just made to transport the troops, and it has some small gun to protect against or something. I don't know, but yeah. Thing about Bradley is that Bradley's insane. I mean, Bradley's missiles or whatever that is, right, can shoot really farther than any other tank. He says more effective than tank, and it doesn't need that big of a barrel, and it doesn't take that much space. So at this point, a tank, what's the point of tank if that's the case? If Bradley can do that, there must be some caveats to it, I guess, but I don't know. I mean, tank ammunition also it's not cheap. I'm guessing Bradley ammunition must be like even more costlier. I don't know. Where this like, is this China's proper vehicle, or is this like like it says a West armor vehicle from the Wish.com? Is it like stolen thing from America from the backrooms and shit? Who knows? So it's gonna be fun. Let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so on a Wish videos to react to more, and that way you can support this channel by helping the algorithm. I've been doing this recently, watching all this like armored vehicle chats and things like that. If you haven't seen other reaction like that, check out the link in the description. And yeah, let's watch it.
The VN-20 is China's newest infantry fighting vehicle. Revealed in 2022, this 50-ton beast is set to become Asia's largest IFV ever produced. The VN-20 claims to just bend every other nation's tiny puny IFV over its knee and give it a couple of spanks. But if that's really the case, what's up with some of these weird design choices, like these giant machine guns placed directly next to my face at the exit ramp? The VN-20 is a unique armored combat vehicle that would play a major role in any potential invasion of Taiwan, but it's not without its fair share of limitations and development challenges. I want to know if this is just another Wish.com knockoff from Xi Jinping, or does the VN-20 really represent a technological leap ahead of the United States? In order to find out, we'll have to dive deep into China's mysterious defense industry, largely run by the state-controlled company Norinco, and see how well their newest IFV aligns with larger CCP objectives. The VN-20 armored vehicle concept first debuted as a simple tabletop model at an arms show in the United Arab Emirates in 2015. At the time, the top military analysts thought that it was ridiculously huge and likely just a fever dream that would never enter production. When I say many military analysts, I feel like I'm saying that with the same credibility as ancient alien astronaut theorists. Then, fast forward to the prestigious airshow China 2022, a gigantic real-life VN-20 prototype was really built, proving the naysayers wrong. But wait, why does this monstrosity look more like a main battle tank than an infantry fighting vehicle? That's because the VN-20 is built on top of the existing Chinese VT-4 main battle tank chassis or hull. So it's really like an unholy combination of a tank and an infantry carrier. The VT-4 was built for foreign sales in 2014 and is already popular.
Hold up there. You can't just do that. You can't just take a tank and make it an infantry vehicle. It would be slow, right? Because it's heavy ass chassis and everything. And the slowness would be a problem for an infantry vehicle. The people can ambush you and fuck you up, right? One of the reasons infantry vehicle needs to have a balance of speed and armorness, right? That's the reason why they make it smaller. Otherwise, they would make it like a fucking giant bus or something. They kind of like 50 infantry inside or something. You can't do that. China basically took like German approach of it. Like Nazis make like mouse was the tank, which is like insanely big. I don't know, 3 stories tall, 2 stories tall. God knows how big that was. And basically sitting there like target practice for an enemy, right? But they never went to production or something like that. I know it's not that big, but still.
In Nigeria, Pakistan, and Thailand. So it's somewhat proven foundation that we're building on here. However, the really interesting thing to note is that the VT-4 chassis was built to support this 52-ton tank. It has a powertrain consisting of 6 large dual rubber-tired road wheels. This meant that fitting the chassis of the VN-20 would give the IFV the frame and power needed to hold heavier armor and weapons than normal. To put this into Barney-style context that even I can comprehend, modern infantry fighting vehicles of the past 4 decades usually range from merely 18.7 tons like the Russian BMP-3 up to the modest 43 tons of the German Puma IFV. However, the VN-20 from China stands in a weight class all of its own. At 50 tons, the VN-20 is one of, if not the heaviest infantry fighting vehicles in the entire world. I mean, just look at this image from a scale of a human standing next to the gigantic, towering creature. Us short kings would need a booster seat and a step ladder just to get into it. But what do you really get in return for all of the extra LBs? The vehicle has room for 3 crew to
all of them. What is the average height in China? I mean, that's why it might look bigger. I don't know.
Work this insane number of weapon systems that it has on it that I'll get into in a second, plus 6 dismounted Chinese infantry soldiers in the rear compartment who are ready to rock. This is when it dawned on me. What we're looking at here with these specifications and capabilities with the VN-20 is a shock trooper vehicle. This thing is meant for assault offensives, to take ground in operations, meant to punch through stubborn defensive lines. But this extra armor and weapons creates major trade-offs. One of the possible limitations with the heavier standard weight could limit the VN-20 from adding additional armor and weapons packages in the future, although I'm not sure what you could possibly hope to dream to add in terms of extra armor. According to reports, allegedly it's equipped with level 6 Stang 45-69 rated armor, which means it can stop up to an incoming 30mm cannon round. If this sounds familiar, it should, because China is not the first country to attempt this strategy. But before we get into that, this video is sponsored by Aura. Aura offers identity theft and fraud protection for your finances, personal info, and family. In the past, I've personally dealt with scammers trying to get access to my accounts, and it can be a difficult thing to handle. People who are active on social media are 30% more likely to have their details stolen compared to other people.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Like US and Russia, China is also another country. Doesn't matter how means making their own shit at this level. Like, imagine like people's like mentality in Taiwan, right? Walking around there like, holy shit, we just have that like coming after us, and it's just like getting bigger and bigger, growing every day, making shit like this.
14-day free trial of Aura. They have proactive protection that does.
Yeah, but go to original video page link from there. Support this channel.
There's more to keep you safe online. It reminds me a lot of Israel's Namir IFV, which is a retrofitted tank chassis, just gutted and given extra room for a squad of infantry in the hull. It works when the engine compartment is up front usually. Except with the Israelis' Namir, to my knowledge, it never attempted to mount a 100mm cannon, let alone a coaxial 30mm autocannon as well. According to the online publication 21st Century Asian Arms Race, it's called a multi-role heavy-duty infantry fighting vehicle for good reason. The tracked VN-20 from China is built with 7 separate armaments attached to it. Most Western IFVs, for context, only have 3 or 4 weapon systems maybe. But okay, we're going for broke here. One of the strange things to note is that it has 2 remote-controlled heavy machine guns on the very rear and
I mean, look, man, like it's a warfare, right? It's like standards are only guidelines at best, right? Anything you can think of it makes sense, people are gonna make it. If somebody thinks like, wait a minute, like let's have a best combination of tank and infantry vehicle mid of somewhere, like let's make a giant vehicle that is like heavy, can fit like massive guns to it, and also can transport vehicle, like we'll call it heavy infantry vehicle or whatever. If it works at certain conditions. But if they're going to use like some to transport something that requires like high speed, that's going to be it will suck completely. But I guess in some scenarios, you're going to break through to enemy line with infantry or something, can make sense.
2 HJ-12E anti-tank missile launcher systems on both sides of the hull. There's a 100mm main gun and a coaxial 30mm cannon on the cannon. That's right, even the VN-20's cannon has a freaking cannon attached to it. Cannons on cannons, it's cannons all the way down. This feels like the design team just saying, do you think we can get away with this? But the 100mm cannon would be a necessity for dislodging enemy troops hiding in cover or trenches. we've seen one of the only effective tools for defeating trenches and soldiers that are in there is large cannons instead of the smaller autocannons. Any Chinese military invading force in Taiwan would face an extensive network of pre-existing trenches that have been hardened and defensively built up. According to sources, the VN-20 can climb a 60% slope, overcome vertical obstacles up to 1.2 meters, and cross a 2.7 meter long trench. Looking at all of these performance metrics, this is about standard across IFVs. What is not standard, however, is the ability for the Chinese VN-20 to do this while maintaining this heavy level 6 Stang protection, which calls into question whether the numbers about this Chinese vehicle are accurate or if they're exaggerated. The two machine guns in the back instantly caught everyone online's attention and imagination. If you want to talk about asshole designs, this vehicle has it. Those machine guns aren't even mounted on the top, they're directly next to where soldiers dismount. So if you drop ramp and leave the vehicle, while those things are firing, you will be instantly disoriented and deaf before you even hit the battlefield. Add to that the insane danger of having two...
I mean, communist China, right? What about the troops? What about them? What if they get disintegrated? Yeah, they'll be fine. Throw more at them. Who gives a fuck? There you go. Right? In any democratic world, place, like, what about the soldiers? And people think about, oh, yeah, soldiers must be fine. That's not what's going to work in here, right? Communism, just like bigger picture. Who gives a fuck?
Machine guns directly at your head level, and this is up for my nomination of asshole design of the entire year. You have a 100% chance of running to the left or right after dismounting and going directly into a face full of bullets from your own vehicle. Now, I'm no genius. All I do is I write hua on this. This is not any real notes. But some YouTube commenters who are smarter than me on another video about the VN-20 pointed out that maybe this is exactly what the designers at Norinco were planning for. Maybe the rear-facing machine guns are meant to prevent your soldiers from fleeing or running away from the battle. As much as I like to poke fun at China because they are a rival military, at the same time I have respect for opposing forces and try not to underestimate them. In reality, what I think this feature is really doing is that it's especially useful for troops operating in...
I don't think that's going to be the purpose. That so people, soldiers don't flee. I think that's like too exaggerated. I think no way that would be the case, right? I mean, come on, man. You're talking about this is like some post Soviet Union times where people like living in very shit that level of shit condition. That's not the case with China, not at that level, right? So soldiers fleeing like that, they I guess communism, it kind of makes sense, but I don't think that's way too extreme. No way.
Urban environment where the direction of the enemy attack could come from all sides. This makes sense in a Chinese military invasion of Taiwan, where nearly 80% of the population there lives in an urban environment and they continue to urbanize. But while we're poking fun at weird design choices, we need to look at the two additional massive external fuel barrels conveniently placed at the rear of the vehicle, above a single hydraulic ramp and the only exit and entry for accompanying infantry. This means that even if you manage to get the motivation to dismount right next to two machine guns going off on either side of you, you also get baptized in diesel fuel as you exit the vehicle. If either of those two canisters are leaking or damaged, so it's just going to pour right on top of you. It's also probably going to make it difficult for machine guns to have a 360-degree view up top. Now I'm just realizing that's probably why they put the machine guns lower at head level. Both sides of the vehicle are protected with 3 levels of armor that include standard armor plating, explosive reactive armor, and wire caged armor, SLAT. This is a very important concept to understand. On the VN-20, it appears that the SLAT armor protects the troop hatch in the rear, the lower portion of the sides covering the suspension. The design is built to disrupt shape charge projectiles like RPGs. This might look like a lightweight cage that you could easily bench press, but the actual weight is many thousands of pounds, which can be a serious engineering problem. This can be enough additional weight to stress a vehicle's mobility and suspension systems and cause the thing to fail constantly, like how we saw with the American Striker IFV when it was first given this slat armor. According to Norinco engineers, the VN-20 offers a ballistic and mine protection level 6 Stang, the absolute highest armor rating according to NATO standards. Level 6 means that the VN-20 is capable of withstanding direct hits from a 30mm armor-piercing fin-stabilized discarding sabot, or other armor-piercing ammunition at only 500 meters distance. So the American Bradley would bounce right off it essentially. Allegedly. In comparison, the M2 Bradley from
It's more like infantry too, like anti-material weapons and things like that. Trying to attack it won't work. That's one of the main reason I'm guessing.
America, standard infantry fighting vehicle is around level 4 Stang, able to withstand 14.5mm without additional armor. So what I'm saying here is that this VN-20 is a proof of concept demonstration. It's just so the Chinese can shout to the world that they have an IFV that can stop a 30mm cannon. I think if you put this in the field, it would struggle to go through mud and it would have trouble to realistically operate. So we know from experiences that the similar
Again, it's like same thing as that alien guy from History Channel. How do you know? Like, you're just guessing at this point. I get it, like it's heavy or something, but who knows? Maybe they thought of it, right? Again, I'm like an Indian. I'm the last person to defend China, but still, it's like we need more information right now.
Israeli IFV vehicle, one of the main drawbacks, very costly to logistically fly it halfway across the world. That's why the United States passed up on it. But big but, large buts here, if you're only planning on defending your nation's borders, or if you're only planning on fighting against a nation no further than a few hundred miles away, then this might be the perfect fit for your tactics. The VN-20 would likely not fare well in austere locations like the Ladakh region in China, where military disputes on the border between Chinese and Indian-controlled territory take place over desolate and freezing mountain ranges. I want to know who in the world had the unmitigated power to create something as insane as the V-20. What kind of unchecked madness is at work here? Who has complete control to the point where they can do basically whatever they want without competing with other companies or dealing with pesky things like focus groups and pooling of opinions? This is where the fellas at Norinco in China come in. I'm talking about the top arms exporter in China and the top weapons supplier to the Chinese military. Norinco was founded in 1980 and has a headquarters in Beijing. Today they do about $71 billion in revenue each year. That's a little more than the US defense company.
Alright, that's a big ass number. $71 billion revenue. That's a revenue a year. Damn, so they must be like, China must be pouring in money and they be making shit left and right for them.
Raytheon or Lockheed Martin. If you consider $4 billion a little, I don't. That's a
lot.
More
than Lockheed Martin.
Norinco is owned by what's called the SASAC, or the State-Owned Assets Supervision and Administration Commission of the State Council. That sounds like fun. Norinco does not have to compete with a dozen other Chinese companies with their designs. What they say goes. This gives them both huge advantages when it comes to getting their way and trying new experimental ideas, and huge disadvantages when it comes to having to innovate in the face of competition. Politico recently caught China's Norinco transferring or smuggling over 1,000 assault rifles and body armor to the Russian military while claiming they were just sending those weapons to Russia for hunting. Ain't nobody hunting Russian bears in the Siberian wilderness at that rate. Norinco's decision to mount an IFV on a tank chassis is not a new concept for the company itself. In 2017, Norinco unveiled the VN-17 infantry fighting.
See, that's the thing with China and Russia, right? That partnership can work for Russia a lot because China and Russia shares a lot of border, obviously, and they can sneak in weapons like before anybody else noticing that, right? Like, oh, there you go. Oh, look at that. It's just like hunting weapons.
Vehicle, which was built on top of the VT-5 tank chassis. Some say the VN-20 is the pinnacle of Norinco's efforts at a heavy combat vehicle. It's marketed as a heavy-duty IFV that combines every role in a single platform. It's kind of wild how fast Norinco is able to produce new experimental armored vehicles. and I have serious suspicions that the Norinco VN20 is more akin to an advertising proof of concept than an actual serious idea, which I'm kind of playing into right now by giving them more attention. I could be wrong, but I think evidence suggests that this Norinco is flexing and trying to get some press for their arms exports more than this being some kind of likely vehicle that we'll ever see in large operational numbers in the PLA. It's so outrageous that it's meant to get us to talk about it.
Hold up, does that work in China though? With the communist doctrine? Can they flex like that without China's like, okay, you told us you're gonna make this. Where is my infantry vehicle, right? Because CCP has like a track record of basically, even if like something is making like a really good buck, like making really much money, capitalism is not the thing. So they would basically like, companies and owners disappears overnight for whatever reason, right? Because it didn't align with CCP's ideas of communism, right? So would shit like this, wouldn't that be a problem?
It's designed to make us stop and wonder what the f is going on here. This leaves Norinco to look to foreign sales. However, primary customers of Chinese military equipment are typically poor both in GDP and in human rights records. As China modernizes, its equipment becomes more expensive, and this could price out many of its customer base. Meanwhile, Western equipment has often held a monopoly over lucrative foreign contracts. They're also hoping to export the VN20 far and wide across the world. In fact, the UAE is already reportedly currently considering acquiring a large number of the VN20 Chinese vehicle. Could China use Norinco's more expensive and modern equipment as debt traps for poor nations struggling with security? This would consist of China giving out predatory loans for poor countries to buy the VN20 military vehicle, only to use that debt later to its advantage. But that's probably not what we're seeing here. This strategy would rely on these nations being interested in purchasing these items in the first place. The VN1, Norinco's first IFV and most affordable unit, reportedly was only purchased by two countries, Thailand and Venezuela. Further research shows that the global arms exports from China have actually fallen 23% from 2018 to 2022. So if the Chinese military doesn't really need it, and foreign militaries are not likely to buy them in significant numbers, what's the point
Looking for cheap flights?
of the VN20? Well, for me, it tells a bigger story. Oscar Wilde once said, "Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery." Since the 1990s, China has gone from copying Russian military hardware to copying American military hardware. Its desire to continually showcase
I mean, China was poor before. Copying Russia was the only way to do it, right? Russian material was cheaper to make. Now they make the copying American because they can, because it's like they have that money and they can pour that much effort and resources in it. So that's obviously like, it's not about flattery. Like obviously US has been like most spender in any defense budget for decades now. So obviously that's everybody knows that. But it's like not everybody can make that. What frightening thing is China can actually pour that kind of money into copying that, right? Copying or like B2 unsuccessfully, but still, and all these things.
the world's most protected or the world's most armed vehicle is an attempt to portray itself as a peer to the United States in the military domain. Meanwhile, trading speed, versatility, and troop capacity for protection and armament is a signal that the Chinese military is asking for vehicles that are fitted to operate in more dense, threat-prone environments. But what is interesting to observe is how much the old vehicles resemble the Russian BMP, with some calling the ZBD-86 a Chinese copy of the BMP-1. This blatant copying goes back before the fall of the Soviet Union, when Russia was considered the greatest military threat to China. Now that times have changed, it's interesting to see the shift in corporate theft and espionage, with modern Chinese military vehicles closely resembling American defense products. So, Norinco is trying to make this advertisement for their fancy weapon systems. But why do I think Norinco cannot match Western IFVs? It comes down to what's called precision manufacturing. Western companies are starting to use advanced next-generation procedures like additive manufacturing, which is essentially 3D metal printing that allows Western armored vehicles to be created in unique, high-precision ways. China has always historically had a problem with high precision manufacturing. We know this. These problems specifically have to do with domestically produced high precision military equipment. This is why 71% of China's engines and aircrafts were imported, accounting for $6.3 billion in arms imports to China between 2015 and 2019. I've recently been learning about the United States National Institute of Standards and Technology.
Hold up, the 71% are imported. I'm guessing from Western worlds, America, Germany, things like that. So how does that work in war times, right? I mean, their whole ideology is like we have to be ready for war times, right? So what if like suddenly sanctions stops all those engines? What are they going to put in their fucking vehicles? Suddenly they're going to adapt to their local engines?
There's an OCD level of obsession in American manufacturing when it comes to precision, like precision down to 10 nanometers. To put that into context, I was watching a video by Machine Thinking. It's a great YouTube channel that I suggest you check out, where they point out that this is a level where your fingernails have already grown 10 nanometers by the time I'm done saying this sentence. That's how small we're talking about, the level of precision. China and Russia would need this level of accuracy to build the kinds of defense thermal imaging and missile systems that Western defense industry produces at large scale. Curious to know what you guys think of this hypothesis, but I think that's what's happening here. This lack of precision, high-end technology means that China is the world's 5th largest arms importer, and they still rely on getting a lot of high-end, difficult-to-create technology from Russia.
America, Russia, Germany. That's 3. Who's the 4th? Is it Japan? I don't know. Who's the 4th?
Which, as we know, cannot rival the United States in production yet. So I think the VN-20 is a little bit compensating with size for what it likely cannot deliver in terms of thermal imaging, missile accuracy, and GPS technology that the West has an edge on. So, how does the VN-20 handle enemy armored threats? The anti-tank guided missile launcher on the VN-20 appears to be a variant of Norinco's HJ-12E. This was produced in 2014 and has an alleged max effective range of 4,000 meters in daytime and 2,000 meters at night. According to military watchdogs, the HJ-12's munition follows a top attack pattern where it shoots out of its container before accelerating at a steep angle as it approaches its target. As an anti-armor munition, the HJ-12 detonates over the roof or the turret of a vehicle and impairs the occupants or detonates the ammunition magazine. Aside from tanks, the missile is a capable anti-fortification weapon or bunker buster. The appeal of the HJ-12 for the airborne is probably its fire and forget targeting that should be an improvement over the line of sight guidance with older anti-tank missile launchers like the HJ-8 from China. Finally, as an added layer of protection, the VN-20 IFV has 3 smoke grenade launchers on either side of its turret that send out enough smoke to make even the heaviest vapor in your unit blush. This is useful for providing concealment during onloading and offloading.
Yeah, I saw that in the T14 video. T14 right? It's a T14 video, and also like Abrams-X type of video where they use a different type of like a camo use thing, right? Just litter the field with smoke. I didn't know that was a thing, but yeah, it kind of makes sense, right? When you don't want them to know, it's like whenever we play Counter-Strike, one thing's for damn sure people are going to spam fucking smoke grenades. This is basically similar to that.
Infantry. However, this is half that of the previous VN-17 that held 6 smoke launchers on each side. When we look at the crew, there's a permanent crew, appears to be 2 to 3 personnel. You got your driver, commander, and gunner, classic, who is optional depending on the variant. The promotional video of the VN-20 shows a 2-man hatch on the turret with the driver's seat underneath. Meanwhile, the airshow variant shows 2 seats where the driver is seated on the left and the vehicle commander seated on the right. The driver and commander hatches also appear to have greater visibility with larger periscope view ports than the previous VN-17. The VN-20 is measured at a length of 7 meters, width of 3.5 meters, and height of 2.4 meters. The vehicle is constructed in a standard fashion for IFVs produced by Norinco and is divided into 3 main parts. The IFV is powered by a 1,300 horsepower diesel engine with a maximum reported speed of 70 kilometers per hour, about 44 miles per hour,
What?
with a
Bullshit.
500 kilometer or
That
311
heavy.
miles range, not including external fuel cans. The engine for the VN-20 is reported to be a domestically produced turbocharged diesel engine. There's no name available for the creature that powers this beast. All we can gather from open source intelligence, which is very limited in China, is that it's often called the Type 150 engine, and some sources claim that it's a modified version of the British Perkins CV-12 1200 TCA. Military analysts have concluded that Norinco products have entered a pattern where the output of China's state-owned conglomerate exceeds the armed forces' own plans for either augmenting or replacing their current equipment. An uncertain future for the VN20 for sure. Come on down to the Foo Bar and Grill, where you could get
Yeah, there you go. I don't know. I don't feel like that's like it's gonna be one of those like flex type of way just to like an advertisement. I think it falls weirdly in like CCP's whole like ideology. I think they are going to make it right. They'll find some loopholes to make it so government doesn't get angry, but at the same time it's also advertisement thing. And yeah, 70 kilometers is feels like no way it does that, right? I don't think it does 70 kilometer. It's just like too heavy and the way it made. I don't know. And also like engine, how reliable is the engine, right? R1 is great. I don't know. Yeah, it can be great. Yeah, look, who knows? At this point, we are just like he said, like the History Channel, that alien guy, right? Anything can work on anything could be bullshit. Who the fuck knows? At this point, just like until some shit happens and we see that in combat, we're not gonna know. But there you go. They're doing new things. That's the worrying part, especially someone who's from Taiwan or something, right? Yeah. And also like India, if they bring shit like this on the borders, but yeah, it's like it's not gonna work on Himalayan ranges. That's the one thing. Like India is basically trying to like specify its like warfare based on the higher altitudes, and you have to know that like how to do it. This is very specified version. Like if they're trying to attack India with Himalayan range, I don't know. This like he said might not work on there. So yeah. However, that was China's new giant infantry vehicle. Is a nightmare version task and purpose. If you like my reason, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.